Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with me today. We have a terrific episode for you with guest Cortney McDermott, and she's an author and a speaker. She is the author of her new book, Give Yourself Permission. She shares her journey from being in the corporate world to realizing that her success did not make her happy and it did not equal well-being. So we talk about how people can get stuck in rigid routines, why confidence is really about trust, and what it means to de-muck your life, which I love. Cortney shares simple practices like movement and gratitude that help reconnect you with your intuition. We talk a lot about your inner wisdom in this episode and how to bring more ease and clarity back into your day, which I really resonated with that part of the podcast. It was such a wonderful episode. I encourage everyone to go and follow Cortney and check out her new book. I'll link everything in the show notes so it's easy for you guys to find. And I always like to share what the most popular products sold for the month with Simply Just Skincare. And now that it's a new month, and we are a little bit into March, but last month, our most popular product sold was the Glass Skin Kit. This kit is 20% off as a bundle, and it includes our mini toner, the little repair, our Undo, which is a hyaluronic acid serum, and our Reboot oil, which is my favorite product. And if you're in Southern California, these products will really come in handy as we have a 90-degree weather in our forecast. What the heck? And make sure you're staying hydrated by spritzing the repair toner after being out. This is something I keep in my bag, and as soon as I'm done with my walks, I always spritz my toner, and it helps with redness, it helps with hydration, it helps balance your oil. It's just the best. So if you have any questions about anything in the line, or if you want to know if something's right for you, send us an email. You can always send us a message on Instagram too, but our email and socials are all linked in our show notes. Enjoy this episode with Cortney. Share this with your favorite friend because it is a good one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our show today, and welcome, Cortney McDermott. I'm so excited to have you on Learning to Glow.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Yeah.
I'm so excited. I'm very interested in, and I know the women listening to this conversation are going to be very interested in our topic. But before we get into all that, I would love if you could introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yes. So first, my name is Cortney without a U. That's important because if you want to connect, which I hope you do, it's Cortney with an O, only an O. And what I do is I write books. I'm an author. I've also written for a lot of mainstream publications, business and lifestyle, and I give talks. And that's one of my favorite things of the business. And I do some really niche one-on-one work here and there too. And yeah, I've worked with all sorts of corporations and organizations, and so we could kind of take it anywhere. I've done lots of different things. I've worn lots of hats.
Yes, and I would love to hear a little bit more about your story. When I did some research, I saw that you used to work in a corporate position, and so I'd love to hear about like what that looked like and how it led you to be where you are here, like talking, sharing, writing, all of that.
Yeah, it's so funny because I never know where to start when people ask me, what do you do? Or, what's been your career? Because there has been so many different lives really in this lifetime. So yeah, I was working as an executive at Vanity Fair Corporation, which is also I had a very interesting work path in that when I started working there, I was in an entry-level position, and everyone said you can't grow in the same company, right? You kind of have to leave, but I was able to. And so by the time I left, I was heading up corporate communications, and I was also heading up our corporate responsibility or environmental social governance for a number of the brands in our portfolio, in our largest portfolio. And it was really funny because I was doing that sustainability work, quote unquote, but I felt like my own life was really unsustainable. And I also felt I kept having this itch about the things that we were looking at because I just felt like we were looking at the wrong stuff. We were looking at waste and emissions, and that was great. We were trying to reduce them, but it was like looking at the problem as a means to solve the problem. And it just wasn't resonant with me. And then I left. Well, I gave them quite a while before I left. And then I left and I joined a group called Sustainability Partners, and I became their vice president. And again, I had that same, even though I was then able to manage my life better because I was working remotely and I could kind of work with any of the clients. We were working with Nike and Starbucks and the US military and NASA, and we were working on these big sustainability strategies. But again, I felt like no one's not saying the emperor's not wearing any clothes, right? And it was really irksome to me that a lot of times this was just parked next to legal, and it was something, seemingly moralistic that a lot of people didn't really want to get their hands on. And it led me again to this place of being like, what are we missing? And the component that I found was really missing, which was the essential one, was we're missing us. We're missing the fact that these decisions that are having such detrimental impacts upstream are actually starting downstream. And the leaders are not in a state of health and well-being. And so how are we going to reverse that? So that's when I decided to write my own book, my first book. That's when I gave it the first TEDx talk, which was, about sustainability being the ability to sustain yourself. And I got to work with a lot of leaders and started my own companies. And yeah, everything kind of snowballed from there. And now I'm really interested in just what are the mechanics behind that kind of change when you see that kind of change. So, because I was seeing massive transformational changes in myself and my clients. And so I was just like, what's going on? So I started studying that. And then that became kind of the thesis and what led to the second book. And so, yeah.
From the outside looking in, do you feel like people would say she's great, everything's all together? But were you feeling like that sense of, you didn't have the sense of well-being and fulfillment? Like what was missing, and like what did that look like for you as far as how your emotions and your mental wellness was?
Yeah. So the first book, Change Starts Within You, I joke that I was miserably successful. Like I had collected all the gold stars. I had everything that society says you're supposed to have to feel like you're a success. And I was just like, this can't be it. I was sitting on the corporate jet, sipping the espresso and wondering, okay, everything looks okay. And I wrote that in the book. I said, sometimes rock bottom looks a lot like the top to everyone else. And I see so many quote unquote high performers in that same situation where they're just pushing, and they're not being pulled by something much greater. And so my work became, and my focus became, how do we start to be pulled by life in a way that feels like, yes, we are also co-designing in a way, but also that what's happening is sort of happening through us as the way that this intelligence wants to express through our form. So yeah, I became increasingly intrigued by that, and definitely was kind of the main focus of where I was going with the first and the subsequent, just everything else that I did. Yeah.
So how did you, like, what's the process? So I don't know if you had like a moment where you're like, okay, I'm obviously not happy, and I don't even know if you felt stuck. I don't know if that's a word that you would ever describe yourself. But for people who are like, okay, I find myself in this position, and it could be even maybe not an executive. Maybe it's a stay-at-home mom who's unhappy with the situation and they're just not sure the first steps to take and I've heard women tell me, I feel stuck, I don't know what to do about it. I know that this ain't it, but I don't know what is. So what was your journey like, and what were those steps that you had to take in the beginning?
Yeah, I think stuck is such the perfect word, because one of the things I often tell people is we have to de-muck. There's so much muck in the way of just a clean expression of you. And if you think about when you were a kid and you were just kind of wild and free, I think people are afraid of being unhappy, but being unhappy is just one of the elements in the nature of who you are. Like feeling unhappiness. It's like that. There's that quote, before enlightenment, I was depressed. After enlightenment, I was depressed. It's like, yes, you're going to feel all those things. And that quote is so profound. It seems kind of almost on the face of it, it can seem like an absurdity, or I didn't really get it the first time I heard it. But afterwards I was like, oh, once you realize that you're not the characters you're playing, you can witness all of the emotions that are flowing through, all of the sensations that are flowing through like a child. So you will notice our nature, our fundamental nature, if you watch any child, Like they're crying, they're laughing, they're kicking on the floor, they're dancing, they're just in constant movement. And the question that you ask is so profound, because what happens is when we go through life and we stop being the way that we are, we calcify into a persona. That's how I like to put it. And the reason I use those specific terms is, one, obviously to calcify is like, again, if you think about that muck, or you think about that calcification on something that doesn't allow it to change, that doesn't allow it to move. And then the persona, the word person, it comes from persona. It was in ancient Greek theater, they were the masks that they wore. So we're all going around with these masks. The trick is realizing, yes, of course I'm wearing a mask. Like, to operate in this dimension, I'm talking to you right now. And I'm talking to you from the persona of someone who writes books, and someone who gives talks, and someone who, discusses these specific topics, right? And at the same time, I can hold the awareness of that character while realizing I'm also a lot more than that, right? We are so much more than the persona that we're playing. And the reason a lot of times I feel like, especially as, wives, mothers, architects of various other things, whether that's in corporations or in the home, right? We can feel like we've got so much muck caked on that essence. We don't know how to get out of it. We don't see the places where the light shines through. And so a lot of the things I talk about in my work is how to de-muck. Because the more you can de-muck, you can still play those characters. Fantastic. No one is saying jump ship. No one is saying test the depths of the water with both feet. What we're saying here is that you get to bring some of that fundamental essence back in. And then being aware of that, you get to play as many characters as you want in your life. Because again, you realize you're not the character.
So yeah, okay. If somebody's listening and wondering like, well, how do I do that? And I feel like there is a lot of like busyness that gets in the way of like, oh, okay, I don't get to do things that make me happy and play like the childlike stuff because I just don't have time for that. Or I'm sure there's a lot of internal dialogue of like, no, that's not how it works anymore. I don't have the need or the desire or the time to do it, to look into any of that. I realize this is true in my own life. As you get stuck in, I'm using the word stuck, but like as you get kind of stuck in like your roles in your day to day, and you're a mother, if you're a mother, if you're working, and it's like there's just so much to try to incorporate that. When I sit back and think, okay, well, what makes me happy? Because you're so busy taking care of everyone else's needs and the duties of the house and the job and all of those things. I think that's like maybe one of the steps too, is like to be aware of what you're feeling and not feel bad about it, but also how do you start that process of, okay, like let's de-muck a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you're reminding me of that when you talk about stuck. And again, I'm glad you brought that word back in. You just reminded me of years ago, a woman that I was working with, she sent me this movement video, and it was from this movement called Koya, which stands for Queen. And the video that she sent me was a video that had shaking. So the idea was that the woman who founded this woman, Rochelle, she put on a fast-paced song, and you had to shake through every part of your body. And the way she talked about it was, she said, imagine a gazelle who's being chased in the wetlands by a tiger, but the gazelle gets away. The gazelle does not go to therapy for the next 10 years about this time that the tiger was chasing her. What the gazelle does is she shakes through every part of her body, releasing the tension, releasing the fear, and goes back to being a gazelle. Now, when I first saw this video, there were parts of my body that quite literally I could not shake. They were so rigid that I couldn't shake them. And what I realized so many profound things. First of all, I shook like she told me to, and I did it for just a few minutes, and I was in tears. The emotional release that came alongside a very fast physical release was so real and so effective that I knew I'd found something really powerful. And that's the thing. We don't need massive amount of time, but what we do need is to have the intention to de-muck. So if that exists, if the intention to de-muck exists, there are many ways. And again, the idea is not to shell shock yourself, right? This is why when people go to the gym on the first of the year and they're like, oh, I'm going to do an hour. And then they go the next day and the next day. And then all of a sudden they're done. Because yes, we have fallen into patterns that are really reinforced societally that say, if you're a mom, it has to look like this. If you're a wife, it has to look like this. If you're an executive, it has to look like this. If you're a housewife, like whatever that is. So we are talking about unraveling so much conditioning. Please don't do it all at like. No one's saying to jump in and just, I mean, that might happen. And for some people, that might be the perfect antidote. But I know for me, it was piecemeal. It was like, oh, I woke up this part of my body. I'm waking something up. I'm de-mucking. Like, even if you look at the skin products that you put out there in the world, which kudos to you, absolutely beautiful. That's an example, right? We are putting so much toxic stuff. Literally, most people are slapping toxic stuff on their face, on their bodies every single day. And most of the time it's just because they don't even know. Now, your body is the largest organ, your skin is the largest organ on your body, in your body. People don't think about it that way, but it's absorbing everything. So again, you've got these layers and layers and layers of things. So it's, how do I start gradually? Because anybody who starts immediately like, oh, I'm just going to change up my whole regimen, it's a shock. It's like when people go to natural deodorant, it's like, what? This doesn't do anything. And so this reminder of like, okay, a little bit, like, for instance, I did a lot of work in sustainability, and we looked at products. And so this was a big part of what I did. And I used to write for mainstream publications like the Huffington Post. I had a whole series called Sustainable Products That Actually Work. And I wanted people to find stuff that like was effective, but was also good for them. And then slowly start making their way into things that, unfortunately, we just have so much gunk out there. So you've got to, like I said, have the intention first, which, if you're listening this far, okay, if you're following Jess in the amazing work she's doing and you're listening this far, you know that this is probably something that you intend for yourself and for your family, right? And so again, it's like piecemeal. Oh, I can shake. I can go for a little walk. I don't need a whole hour in the morning to meditate. I want to give an example. I want to make this like really real. So today, I wake up for the last, I don't know, however many weeks, I've kind of fallen into a routine of doing the same things. And I was, walking usually or meditating right when I got up, and then I would flip and do the opposite. And then maybe I would do a little bit of stretching, maybe not, but it was kind of like this routine. And I felt that I was getting rigid. Like, I felt rigidity, and I didn't realize totally until yesterday. So this morning I woke up and I was like, what would be different? Okay. But what would also call on that playfulness of this energy and free up where I am starting to calcify? And so I was just in bed. I decided to write about this weird dream. Everyone I know has been having super weird dreams since the new year. Anyway, so I decided to write about this dream and kind of what it might mean for me. And then I wrote some things I'm really grateful for. And then I stretched in bed. And then I decided I had this, I don't know, inspiration to listen to instrumental covers. And so I started dancing in my living room to these instrumental covers. And it felt so freeing that I wasn't in the rigid, like, oh, now you need to meditate, and now you need to go for a walk, and now you need to do this. And it was like, those things are great, but what is calling inside you? Like, what is this intelligence calling for you? Because the antidotes are in you. And that's what I'm always reminding people, it's like, whoever says they have your answers, run in the opposite direction. Like, I don't have your answers, but the whole point of us having this conversation is to remember that we ourselves do, and to allow ourselves that moment of being released from the paradigms that we're all reinforcing that say it has to look like this. I call BS. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love this so much. I love that you're obviously the type of person who has enough wisdom to be like, okay, what do I need? And look inside and listen to your wisdom, because I don't think that's natural for a lot of us. I've been in this exact, like what you were describing, where I'm doing this morning routine and I'm like, just check mark. And I'm like, am I even getting anything out of this at this point? I don't think I even need this today. I could use something else, but my checklist is here and I'm following that so strictly. And I think to be able to step back and look at that might take practice for some people. And a lot of what you said about we're so used to being told this is what a good mom, like you said, a good mom, a good wife looks like. And I've gotten stuck in that as trying to be, okay, I'm going to be the best mom, so I'm going to do what this person looks like. They're doing a great job. I should be doing all of those things. But then I'm like, okay, well, that person doesn't have the values that I have. Their kid isn't the same as my kid. So I love that viewpoint of going, okay, what do I need? What does my family need? Like, and really not just doing it because that's the thing or that's what people are doing. That was something I talked about on this podcast a long time ago when it came to sports. And I was like, sports in Southern California and a lot of the country, it's so intense and it's got to be this way and you got to start here. And I'm like, I don't know. Does that resonate with me? Sometimes no. And so but it's like, you're also having to be, what if I make a mistake? So I think there's so many other things that you said that I want to touch on, but I think this is a good time to bring up confidence. Do you think having that voice in your head say, I don't know if this is right for me and my family, maybe I should just do the standard, the norm. Doesn't it take confidence to be like, no, I'm going to do my thing because I know this is best for me?
Let's flash back for a moment to that word that you use, mistake. Am I going to make a mistake?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, you are. Yes. Yes, you are. That's okay. What did we get conditioned into and entrained into this idea that we can't make a mistake? The absurdity of it is so extravagant. It will blow your mind if you sit with it. Blow your mind. Yes. Yes. Let's make mistakes. Let's let ourselves, as women, let ourselves be let off the hook and let other people be let off that hook. You don't know how to parent. No one does. I think it was Aristotle who said it's the only impossible job. Your children are designed specifically for you. You are designed specifically for your children. This was the hardest and still remains the hardest lesson for me with my daughter is everyone has an opinion about how you should be a parent, but it's only at the end of the day between you and your child.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if we could just let each other off of these hooks, judge not that ye be not judged. And that starts with you. That starts with, I refuse to continue to judge myself. And anytime it comes up, I'm going to cast that error thought on this light within to bring me the grace that can match the grit of my determination to not follow what everyone else is doing and saying and deciding and prescribing for my life. And that I'm going to listen to that inner knowing, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And that does lead us perfectly to real confidence. Because when people talk about confidence, they're often mistaking it for what looks like, I can say the things. I say the things that sound right. I show up in the room and I look a certain way. Mm-hmm. Once again, I call BS. Absolutely not. That's not confidence. The word itself, confidence, comes from confidere, which means with trust, with reliance. It's reliance and trust in yourself. It's reliance and trust in others. And it's reliance and trust in life. Now, this is one of the scariest things that we can do because guess what? It means that we have to allow for mistakes. It means that we have to say, I have no idea why it went that way, but I trust. Holy smokes, is that scary? But I'm going to point out the absurdity again, because there's an absurdity in this reasoning, because we have to catch ourselves. We have to catch the tricks and the traps of the rational mind, okay? So the absurdity lies in the fact that we believe with any part of our life that we need to control. We need to control outcomes. We need to control what it looks like. We need to control how it comes across. Like, here's the thing, Jess, I already love you. Okay. Like you're already, this was a match, it happened quickly. Normally it doesn't happen that way. Normally I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do that. Let me see. I'm very whimsical about stuff. Right. But this is already here. Right. I trusted that life brought me something I looked at it and I was like, oh, let's just do it. Let's just do it together. And then we found a way to do it. Okay. But here's the thing. And Einstein put it, I think, yeah, it was attributed to Einstein, is the greatest, most important decision you will ever make is if you live in a friendly universe or if you live in a hostile one. Are things happening for you even when you can't see that? And I didn't finish the absurdity of it because here's the thing. We are not trying to control 99.999999999, I don't even know how long that number goes on, percent of what is occurring both within us and outside of us. If we were trying to do that, we'd go crazy. We'd go absolutely crazy. If you were trying to say, is my heart beating? Is it not beating? Is it beating? Is it not beating? That's called anxiety, and it's called an anxiety attack. Most of us, luckily, are not worried about these fundamental functionings. We trust that they're doing what they need to do. When they don't, we go to a doctor, we go to some sort of specialist, we try to figure out what's going on. And I think pretty much always it's psychosomatic, but I digress. The point that I'm making is you're not sitting there wondering if you should create a 5-year plan for the trillions of biochemical reactions that are occurring in your body every second. You would never have the audacity to assume that you know better than this intelligence that is orchestrating everything. You would never have that audacity. In the same way, you don't wonder if the planet is going to continue to spin on its axis. Am I going to see the sun tomorrow? Am I not going to see the sun? I mean, maybe if you're worried about cloudy and rain, but you're not worried that there will be no light. Funny enough, we're not even worried most of the time, most of us, if we're going to wake up tomorrow. You don't know that. You don't know that with any certainty. You don't know if your next breath is going to come. So we are living 99.999% of our life with this sense of faith. And I will call it faith because it is blind, because we do not know, we do not orchestrate, and we are very highly aware, if we consider it even for a moment, that we can't control it. And then we take this infinitesimal part that's left over, this 0.0000001%, which is like our kids, our relationships, our business. I better make sure that I control that. Oh my God, my kids are not behaving in the way that society says. Oh no, the sky is falling. It's absurd. Now, I recently heard a beautiful story. I love this, if you want me to share.
Yeah.
Okay. I just love this. I'm excited to share this on stage. It's just such a beautiful story. It's a samurai who is on a ship, and the ship is about to go down, and they're in this terrible storm. And all the people are running around and they're screaming and they're, scared. And the samurai is sitting there and he's looking out at the horizon and he's smiling. And his wife runs up to him screaming, but she's also on the boat. And she says, "What are you doing? How can you sit there like that? Why are you smiling?" And he pulls out his sword in a flash and he sticks it at her throat. And she looks at him and she laughs. And he says, "Why are you laughing?" And she says, "Because you love me, you would never do anything to hurt me." And he says, "Well, now you know how I feel." Confidence is about looking at life that way. It's about saying, I can find a smile in the face of this storm. I can be the cosmos in the chaos. I can trust that life is orchestrating things for my best. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong, but isn't it a better way to live? Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely less suffering. For me, that's a better way to live. I think too, letting go of that concern that we have so much with making the mistake, like you were talking about, I feel like that would bring a bunch of confidence too. Mm-hmm. If you're just like, okay, I'm going to release that. You've heard it so many times where people say it either was a win or it was a learning, situation. There's a lot of places in people's lives where they can be like, okay, I can make a mistake and I'm okay with it because it's like my business. You got to try something. It's a feedback data at the end of the day. But I think people put more worry about, well, I got to control my kids because like that's higher stakes. But at the end of the day, like that's really illusion to think that we can control that situation or the outcome. That's the funny part, is that's just not reality, but we feel like we can and we think that we can, but that doesn't mean that we can.
Yeah. And I ultimately, here's the thing, we're all trying to do our best. And I really do believe that even when it really doesn't look like it on some level, I feel like that's just where where the intelligence is in that moment, right? And how it's needing to express for whatever reason that, again, we cannot understand that. Like, I don't pretend to understand how my heart, I mean, yes, we can understand some of the mechanics. I can understand that my brain is sending electrical impulses down into my legs, having me take one step after another. I can kind of understand that, but why? Like, what's behind that? How did it start? I mean, just, it's like, you would just have to stop because no matter how far science digs, the truth is we don't really know. I mean, we don't. It's just kind of, it's sort of cute, actually, all the ways that we try to dissect and get to this thing. But you're absolutely right in the sense that it does that kind of sense of a newfound responsibility. Years ago, I read that book by Stephen Covey, but it's also been attributed to Viktor Frankl, this idea of responsibility. It was defined as the ability to respond. Like, instead of it being, oh my God, I've got all this responsibility and I have all this stuff on my shoulders, it's, I have an ability to respond differently. What could that look like? And just allowing ourselves a little more space and flexibility, and allowing others more space and flexibility, so that we can decalcify, so that we can de-muck, so that we can start shedding some of the weight and some of the film that has been placed between us and the way this intelligence wants to express to us.
Oh, I love that. Well, obviously, I have like a million other things that I want to ask you, but we are short on time, and I know a lot of women are going to want to hear more from you. So can you tell us about your book, a little bit, what we can expect from your new book? And then after that, maybe where everyone can go find you and follow you and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, the second book is called Give Yourself Permission. And it was really, well, one, it kind of felt just like intuitive hits after intuitive hits of, how can we do what we're talking about here? How can we, especially as women, start like cleansing ourselves of this stuff that's been put on us? And then the other thing was like really leaders too, because I realized lots of times the only one who wasn't giving us permission was ourselves. So that book is based on it, and it's kind of, permission to change your mind, permission to do what you love and make a lot of money doing what you love, like all these kinds of things. And then ultimately, like, permission to be you, which is the key that sort of unlocks everything. And so I just love this second book. I did the audiobooks for both of them too. So you can find those. You can find them wherever, books are sold. So if you, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, iTunes, Spotify, you can find the audiobooks there, and for both of them. And yeah, so you can find them everywhere. Also on my website, which is Cort Inc., C-O-R-T, remembering that the spelling is with the O, C-O-R-T-I-N-C is the short URL, or Cortney McDermott. And I'm also, in these other places on Instagram and LinkedIn, and starting to share more, because I was really hesitant about using social media, but now my team is like really amped me up on it. And I'm like, we're doing it. And the videos are just going to be real. They're just going to be what's going on right now. And I'm loving that too. So yeah, definitely. Whoever is engaged with you, I would love to connect. And I do also read everyone's experience with the podcast or the books. I mean, we've had hundreds of testimonials of people writing in about how the books have changed their lives, how a talk changed their lives. So I make sure that those all get filtered through to me, because I want to hear from people and connect with them personally. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. I can't wait to read your book. I will link everything in the show notes, so it's easy for our listeners to just go check the show notes and click to find you. But thank you. You're amazing.
Thank you,
it was such a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.